There's about 3-4 years ago, I was promoting one of the Tekken movies.
Right.
That Steven Seagal. This journalist suddenly said, "Hey, what do you think of Steven Seagal saying you don't know how to punch?"
Steven Seagal, action star, martial arts expert, and one of Hollywood's most notorious troublemakers. While his skills made him a 90s icon with hits like Under Siege and The Glimmer Man, behind the scenes his reputation was anything but heroic. From bizarre behavior and on-set nightmares to shocking allegations and legendary feuds, Seagal has built a name as one of the most disliked figures in Tinseltown. For actor John Leguizamo, a nasty run-in with Seagal didn't just become an unforgettable story, it turned into a highlight of his 2011 Broadway one-man show Ghetto Clown. In an interview with the AV Club, Leguizamo recalled showing up on the first day of rehearsals for the 1996 thriller Executive Decision, only to hear Seagal loudly declare to the cast, "I'm in command. What I say is law." Leguizamo couldn't help but laugh. Who walks into rehearsal and says that kind of stuff? But the laughter didn't last. According to him, Seagal suddenly slammed him with an Aikido elbow against a brick wall, knocking the wind out of him. I dropped to the ground, gasping, and all I could say was, "Why? Why?" Years later, Leguizamo brought the story to life on stage in Ghetto Clown, complete with a hilarious reenactment of Seagal's flailing arms and his famously awkward running style, which the New York Daily News once described as feminine. Apparently, Steven Seagal eventually heard about John Leguizamo's playful mockery and, according to The Observer, even threatened to punch him if they ever crossed paths on a red carpet. Leguizamo brushed it off with a laugh, joking, "I don't think he's invited to a lot of red carpets." Reflecting on Seagal's strange transformation over the years, he wondered aloud, how does a working-class guy who started as a martial arts trainer become such a putz? How'd you turn into such an egomaniacal diva? Charlize Theron might look like a supermodel, but she's no stranger to throwing punches, on screen and off. An Oscar winner for her chilling transformation into serial killer Aileen Wuornos in Monster, 2003, she's also proven her toughness in action films like Atomic Blonde, The Old Guard, and the critically acclaimed Mad Max, Fury Road, hailed as one of the best action films ever made. In a 2020 interview with Howard Stern, known for pressing guests about Seagal, Theron didn't hold back. Referring to viral clips of him awkwardly shoving around opponents, she scoffed, "He's just incredibly overweight and pushing people. He can barely fight. It's ridiculous." She also condemned the numerous allegations of sexual misconduct made against him by figures like Portia de Rossi, Jenny McCarthy, and journalist Lisa Guerrero. "I have no problem talking about him because he's not very nice to women," she declared, before aiming a sharp message directly at Seagal himself. Then there's Saturday Night Live. Seagal's 1991 hosting stint is infamous, not for laughs or classic sketches, but for going down as one of the most disliked appearances in the show's history. Behind the scenes, his reputation soured almost instantly. Finally, actress Juliana Margulies shared a deeply unsettling personal story that revealed why she's never forgotten her encounter with Seagal. Early in her career, she auditioned for a role in his 1991 film Out for Justice. Like many young actors, she agreed to meet with him to discuss the part. But what should have been a professional meeting quickly turned bizarre, uncomfortable, and downright threatening, a memory she's carried with her ever since. Former ER star Juliana Margulies has shared a chilling personal story that explains her deep wariness of Steven Seagal, an encounter that haunted her for years. Early in her career, she was up for a role in Seagal's 1991 film Out for Justice. Like many hopeful young actors, she agreed to meet with him to discuss the part. But what happened in that meeting was anything but professional. It was bizarre, unsettling, and outright threatening. Speaking candidly on CBC's Radio Q, Margulies recalled sitting down on a couch in Seagal's hotel room only to feel something hard beneath the cushion. Seagal casually remarked, "Oh, that's sorry, I must have left my gun there," before pulling out a large black pistol. For anyone, the moment would have been terrifying. But the strangeness didn't stop there. Seagal then placed the gun on his nightstand and asked if he could read her palm, claiming he was a healer. With the weapon within reach and the atmosphere growing more uncomfortable by the second, Margulies quickly blurted that she had to leave and practically ran out of the room. The experience left a lasting mark. Years later, during a 2017 interview with podcaster Jenny Hutt, Margulies revealed that this encounter shaped how she handled her career. She explained that because of what happened with Seagal, she refused a similar private hotel room meeting with Harvey Weinstein, a decision that, in hindsight, spared her from what would later become one of Hollywood's most infamous scandals. Jenny McCarthy, actress, former Playboy model, and now a judge on The Masked Singer, has also shared her own disturbing run-in with Seagal, one that echoed the same troubling pattern. The incident took place during her audition for Under Siege 2: Dark Territory. First revealed in a 1998 interview with Movieline, McCarthy recalled arriving prepared with the script in hand, ready to perform her reading. But instead of focusing on the role, Seagal interrupted her with a different request. After asking about her title as Playboy's Playmate of the Year, he suddenly told her to stand up. "I stand up," she remembered, and he goes, "Take off your dress." I said, "What?" Jenny McCarthy recalled. And he said, "There's nudity." I told him, "No, there's not, or I wouldn't even be here right now." But Seagal pressed again, insisting, "There's nudity. Take off your dress." Shocked and overwhelmed, McCarthy broke down in tears. "I just started crying and said, 'Rent my Playboy video, you asshole,'" she remembered before running out to her car. But the encounter didn't end there. As she was getting into her vehicle, McCarthy claimed Seagal grabbed her and warned, "Don't you ever tell anybody. She won't sue me or say anything, because she knows it's true." It was a chilling threat, an attempt to silence her. Years later, McCarthy remains outspoken. "If I saw him today, I would still say, 'You're a F***ing asshole, and I really hope you change your ways.'" Portia de Rossi, best known for her standout roles in Ally McBeal, Arrested Development, and Scandal, as well as being the longtime spouse of TV icon Ellen DeGeneres, also faced a disturbing encounter early in her career. As an aspiring actress, she went in for what was described as a final audition for one of Steven Seagal's action films. In 2017, de Rossi took to Twitter to share the unsettling experience. She recalled being called into Seagal's office, only for him to sit her down and unzip his leather pants. "He told me how important it was to have chemistry off-screen," she wrote. Horrified, she fled the room immediately. The ordeal didn't end there. When she called her agent to report what happened, she was met with a dismissive, almost sarcastic reply, "Well, I didn't know if he was your type." Her decision to speak out later became part of the larger #MeToo movement, helping expose misconduct in Hollywood. Ellen DeGeneres stood firmly by her side, retweeting her wife's story with pride, "I'm proud of my wife." Randy Couture isn't just a former MMA champion known for dominating pay-per-view fights. He's also an actor and stunt performer, with credits including HBO's Oz. With first-hand experience in the demanding world of stunts, Couture understands better than most the difference between actors who respect their stunt teams and those who don't. Steven Seagal, notorious for being rough and sometimes reckless with stunt performers, drew sharp words from veteran stuntman Couture. In a 2012 interview with Jay Glazer, Couture joked he'd come out of retirement just to fight Seagal, only for the banter to turn serious when Seagal shot back that Couture could face him anytime, someplace with no witnesses. Rather than being rattled, Couture later laughed off the threat in a 2021 MMA Junkie radio appearance, but didn't hold back on Seagal's reputation, insisting that stuntmen know the stories of injuries around him. UFC and WWE star Ronda Rousey also had no love for Seagal, recalling how her uncle, martial arts legend Gene LeBell, once choked him out on set to the point of humiliation. In an interview, she declared LaBelle could still beat Seagal even in old age, and warned she herself would step in if Seagal disrespected her uncle. "I'd make him crap his pants a second time." Even actor Brian Cox weighed in, having co-starred with Seagal in the 1996 flop The Glimmer Man. With critics calling it a grimy, humorless glimpse of Seagal's direct-to-video career, Cox later admitted that experience cemented his poor opinion of the action star. In his 2021 memoir Putting the Rabbit in the Hat, Brian Cox didn't hold back when sharing his views on Hollywood stars. He called Johnny Depp overblown and overrated, described Edward Norton as the nice lad but a bit of a pain in the ass, and said David Bowie was the better pop star than actor. But it was his take on Steven Seagal that stood out. Seagal is as ludicrous in real life as he appears on screen. He radiates a studied serenity as though he's on a higher plane than the rest of us. While he's certainly on a different plane, no doubt about that, it's probably not a higher one. That biting remark echoed Seagal's long-running feud with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which first surfaced in the early 1990s. On the Arsenio Hall show, Seagal dismissed Van Damme's martial arts credentials and later scoffed at the idea of a fight, saying it made him want to laugh in your face. On his reality series Steven Seagal, Lawman, he even likened Van Damme to an ant, insisting Van Damme would run if he saw him. But Sylvester Stallone later revealed a very different story. At a party in 1997, Van Damme directly challenged Seagal to a fight in Stallone's backyard, only for Seagal to make excuses and leave. Van Damme later tracked him down at a nightclub, offering another chance, but Seagal vanished again. Van Damme was just too strong. Seagal wanted none of it, Stallone told FHM magazine. Rap legend DMX, who co-starred with Seagal in Exit Wounds, 2001, and the critically panned Beyond the Law, 2019, also experienced his share of behind-the-scenes tension with Seagal, especially after their first collaboration. After the 2001 premiere of Exit Wounds, Steven Seagal surprised many by speaking warmly of DMX in an interview with IGN, calling him a gentleman, thoughtful, and respectful. But DMX remembered things very differently. In a blunt interview with Rap Pages, he mocked Seagal's looks, describing him as a fading head with spray-on hair, and ridiculed his odd way of speaking, saying it sounded like an old slave master. DMX admitted he and his wife often laughed at Seagal's behavior behind his back, ultimately dismissing him as an uphold. Still, whatever bitterness lingered eventually gave way to business, as the two reunited years later for Beyond the Law in 2019. Not all of Seagal's clashes came from film sets. In 2017, heavyweight boxing legend George Foreman took to Twitter at age 69 to challenge Seagal to a 10-round fight in Las Vegas, declaring, "I use boxing. You can use whatever." Foreman later revealed he had spoken with Seagal's team, though never with Seagal himself, who at the time was in Russia with Vladimir Putin. The fight never happened, but Foreman confidently maintained he could knock Seagal out within 2 rounds. In 2018, actress Rachel Grant, best known from Die Another Day, accused Seagal of sexual assault during an audition for Out for a Kill back in 2002. She claimed he pressured her to remove her top, and when she refused, he allegedly pulled it down himself before forcing her onto a bed. Grant said she was left shaken and humiliated, though Seagal's lawyers firmly denied the allegations. Even martial arts icon Chuck Norris had doubts about Seagal. In a 1993 interview with Dick Cavett, Norris cautiously noted that most of Seagal's fight scenes were shot in quick cuts, making it hard to judge his actual skill. When Cavett recounted an encounter with an unfriendly martial artist at a bookstore, Norris immediately asked, "Was it Steven Seagal?" Cavett replied no, but agreed Seagal certainly looked the part. When Dick Cavett asked Chuck Norris whether Steven Seagal's dark, menacing persona was just acting or something real, Norris chuckled and admitted it sadly carried over into his everyday life. And when Cavett oddly asked if Seagal had ever stomped on his foot, Norris smirked and replied in classic fashion, "No, he wouldn't dare." Actress Rae Dawn Chong also came forward in 2018 with her own troubling account from the 1980s. She said she was sent to meet Seagal at a hotel late at night, only to be told he was waiting in his room. Once inside, she claimed Seagal sat in a way that exposed himself before pretending it was an accident, then asked if her blouse was silk and if he could touch it. Chung refused, snapped back that he already knew what silk felt like, and left, later admitting bluntly, "To be honest, I would have killed him." Actor Stephen Tobolowsky, best known as Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day, remembered his time filming The Glimmer Man with Seagal as nothing short of trauma, terror, and confusion. Cast as a serial killer, he said Seagal suddenly decided he didn't want to kill the character because it was bad karma. Tobolowsky improvised a spiritual explanation to convince him otherwise, and the scene was shot as written, but Seagal later ad-libbed a contradictory line, forcing Tobolowsky to return months later just to record an off-camera death. "It's ludicrous," he laughed. And in 2017, Liam Neeson added his own jab on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Asked if he had ever worked with Seagal, Neeson didn't miss a beat. "I want to know who dyed his hair." On Jimmy Kimmel Live in 2017, Liam Neeson took a playful jab at Steven Seagal's ever-questionable hairline, joking, "Stevie Wonder," to the audience's delight. But behind the humor, Neeson admitted he had reason to be annoyed. During a press junket, a reporter blindsided him with Seagal's claim that Neeson didn't know how to punch. For a man who had boxed in his youth, the remark was ridiculous. "I know how to punch," Neeson said firmly, still visibly irritated. The conversation then turned to Seagal's high-profile appearances in Russia, prompting Kimmel's perfectly timed quip, "I don't know if he moved there or we sent him there and told him not to come back," which drew more laughter. Tim Meadows, then a cast member, recalled in Live from New York that Seagal constantly complained about jokes he didn't understand, which was often because, as Meadows bluntly put it, he just wasn't funny. Julia Sweeney echoed that sentiment in an interview with HuffPost, calling his performance horrible on such a scale it was undeniable to anyone who was there. She even remembered one bizarre incident when Seagal locked himself in his dressing room, furious over a sketch that suggested Hans and Franz, the fake bodybuilders, could beat him up. "It was really legendary craziness," Sweeney admitted, a disaster now cemented in SNL lore. David Spade later added his own perspective, telling Watch What Happens Live that working with Seagal was tough, since he refused to play along with the cast's improvisational style. His stiff, uncooperative attitude clashed completely with the spirit of the show. Even longtime producer Lorne Michaels didn't mince words. During a 1992 sketch, Nicolas Cage joked that viewers might think he was the biggest jerk ever to host the show. Michaels shot back without hesitation, No, that would be Steven Seagal." Pamela Anderson also had her own story of an uncomfortable encounter. When she was being considered for a role in Under Siege, 1992, Anderson recalled Seagal pressuring her by saying, "If you don't do it, then that girl across the hall will do it and she'll get the job." Her response was short and sharp, "Well, good. Goodbye." At the time, Anderson was one of Hollywood's most in-demand stars thanks to Baywatch and Home Improvement, and she later explained that her intuition and spidey sense often helped her avoid dangerous situations. In this case, she trusted her instincts, walking away when Seagal answered the door in a bathrobe. The part ultimately went to Erica Eleniak, another Baywatch alum and Playboy model, who later joked, "My exit was Pamela Anderson's entrance." Stories like these are just a glimpse into the long trail of controversies, rivalries, and grudges that have followed Seagal throughout his career. From actors and musicians to models and athletes, The list of people who've clashed with him is long and still growing. The real question is Steven Seagal a misunderstood martial arts legend, or has he earned the backlash that continues to haunt his name?